What's up guys? Welcome back to another video. I'm gonna keep this intro short and sweet because there's really nothing special about this episode. It's just some hands from the Gardens Casino, my local poker room. If you guys watched the last vlog, you know that this vlog was supposed to be, or this session was supposed to just get me some supplementary hand histories to add on to the last episode, but it ended up being a lot more eventful than I expected it to be, so I'm turning it into its own. So without further ado, let's get straight into the hands. Normally I like to plan out an intro, look a little more put together, something like that. But I'm currently doing an experiment where I don't take 2 months to post a video, so I wanted to get this out quickly. So we're just winging it. Let's get into this. God damn it, I forgot to turn off the fan. We're playing the 5-5 game at the Gardens as usual, but I have heard that the 5-5-10 is pretty good and has a lot of action. One of my buddies plays it pretty consistently, and there are a lot of bomb pots, apparently a lot of interesting things that go down. And I've even heard that a lot of people who don't live in the area have heard about the game and want to come down to play it, so I guess it must be pretty good. If you guys would like to see me play the 5-5-10 for a vlog, let me know and I'll try to get a session in. I've actually never played higher than 5-5, but it would be good for content and it's not even too much of a shot since it's just 5-5-10. In the first notable hand we're going to be covering, I've got King 10 offsuit in the low jack. I open it up to $20 and only get called by the hijack, so we're going heads up to a flop which comes down 8-10 king with 2 clubs. We've got top 2 on a pretty wet board, and I don't like what I do here. I only bet 25, which is half pot. On this wet of a board, I think I should be betting bigger, especially with how strong my hand is, but how vulnerable it is as well. My opponent ends up making the call, and we are going to a turn card, which is the 6 of clubs. So pretty bad card for my hand. 9-7 gets there, as well as any club draw. On top of this, I do make another mistake in my opinion. I decided to bet 75, and at the time I remember thinking to myself that I can still get value from some hands, so I shouldn't always be scared of a flush. But I think if a bad card comes for me, betting smaller makes sense, or checking. If I bet really big, I'm kind of polarizing my hand, which isn't even super strong anymore. And yeah, I'm only going to get called or potentially even raised by worse. And I think strong opponents who know I'm going to be betting top 2 here can put a lot of pressure on me just by raising with a lot of their hands. So yeah, don't really like my bet, and my opponent ends up calling again, and not super sure where I'm at. I think I would be facing a raise if he had a stronger hand, but again, can't be too comfortable here. Anyways, the river card comes down, the queen of clubs. Terrible card since it completes a lot of straight draws, and now any club makes a flush. I'm just praying to get to showdown at this point, and I just check it over to my opponent, hoping that he has some kind of weak top pair or maybe some random 2 pair that also wants to check back. Nope, he bets 200 here, and there's not really any way I can call here, so I decide to fold, and luckily for us, he does show his hand, and he had the ace of clubs. So just an unfortunate run out, and this is one of several hands I've lost at this point. The other ones weren't too interesting, but the session already wasn't going very well, and it definitely sucks when you finally make a big hand after a while and still lose it. In this next hand, we've got King 10 once again, this time in the big blind and this time suited. The under the gun player limps. The player in under the gun +1 is a young guy who hasn't played a hand in forever. He raises it up to $30, and there are 2 calls before actions on me. With my specific hand, it has a lot of playability post-flop, and I could call here and just take a flop, but it is not super strong, and I think if I had like King Jack suited or King Queen suited, I would be more incentivized to call even being in the big blind, but I think King 10 is kind of on that borderline, so I decided to squeeze here to 160, which I really don't like in hindsight for 2 big reasons. One of them is that, like I said earlier, the player in under the gun +1 hadn't played a hand in a very long time, so I knew he was tight and I knew he had a big hand here, especially with his open raise sizing. And 2, which is also a really big reason, is that he only had about 300 in front of him, and because he's short stacked, chances are he's willing to get the money in more often than not. This also makes it so that my sizing of 160 is really bad, because if he shoves, I'm basically committing myself to a call. If I do decide to raise here, I think a sizing of 110 would be better. Then I can give myself some room to fold, and I think more or less I'm still getting the same fold equity against at least the other players in the hand. But like I said, don't think this guy is folding here, so don't think I should be raising. The under the gun limper folds, and now action is back on the initial raiser. Unsurprisingly, he does go all in, and everyone folds to me. I end up making the call knowing I'm behind. The flop is decent, all things considered. It comes down King 6 Jack, giving us top pair. I let my opponent know right away I've got a king, and he says, I have a king. Nice hand. Yeah, we are pretty much drawing dead at this point. The turn and river do not improve our hand. My opponent shows that he has pocket kings, and we are going to lose a very big all-in pot that I definitely did not need to be involved in. Had I called pre-flop instead of raising, I might have just called a flop bet and then ended up folding to a turn shove, but unfortunately, I took a line that caused me to lose the absolute maximum. The session continues to go badly. Not only am I running pretty badly, but I'm also making a lot of mistakes, and I think at this point I was already in for a couple buy-ins. We've got ace-jack offsuit in early position for this next one. The under-the-gun player raises to $20. I'm next to act, and at this point I had been playing pretty tight, not getting too many hands pre-flop. This combined with the fact that I'm facing an early position raise, and I only have ace-jack offsuit, means this is a very clear 3-bet, so I decide to flat. Everyone else folds, the flop comes down, deuce, 7, king with 2 hearts. We've got absolutely nothing, so when my opponent checks it over to me, I'm happy to check back. The turn brings the 8 of diamonds, which puts a second flush draw on the board. This doesn't help our hand at all, and our one back door is now closed. My opponent now decides to bet. He makes it $25, which is only half pot, and I'm a little suspicious at this point because I don't think this is the type of player who would have a top pair checking range on the flop, especially with the flush draw out there. The most likely hands he could have here that are strong are maybe like 9s through queens that are now not afraid since I check back on the flop, or maybe slow played pocket kings, which is also reasonable. But I've got close to the nut-nothing, only losing to ace-queen, and I think I could potentially make a move on the river, depending on the run-out. So I let the suspicion get the better of me, and I decide to make the call. The river comes down the 5 of diamonds, completing the backdoor flush. My opponent bets pretty big this time, making it $75, so 3/4 pot. And for the same reasons that I mentioned on the turn, I just don't think there are a ton of really strong hands he could have here. Would he be betting this big with something like queens? Not really sure. But I decide to go with my gut here, and I just don't think he has anything. So I raise it up to $200. I've got absolutely nothing, and I am just praying for a fold. He doesn't call right away, which is a good sign, and he thinks for a little bit before eventually saying that he thinks I've got him.
Oh, once you already, when you call the flop,
He's high.
flop, you're never full.
Nice hand. And he makes the call. Almost got one through, guys. Except not really, because I don't think anyone's ever folding jack 10 of diamonds here, but who knows? He thought about it. Let's see if we can finally win a hand with pocket aces. The player in the low jack is fairly new to the table. He's a young guy, and he seems pretty good, at least from what I could gather. He opens to 20, I'm in the cutoff with pocket aces, and I make it $65. Only the initial raiser calls. We are going heads up to a flop, which comes down king 8-4, rainbow. Very, very safe flop for pocket aces in a 3-bet pot. My opponent checks to me, and I put out a c-bet of $50. I think you could even argue for a smaller bet of like 40 with your entire range here, but I just made it 50 at the time, can't be too bad. And interestingly, my opponent actually check raises me to 145 here, which is kind of strange because he's repping a super narrow range. I don't think he's ever having like king 8 suited here. I mean, maybe. But based on the player I think he is, I think the only value hand he should have here is like pocket 8s. And in theory, I don't know if there are many bluff candidates on this kind of board. So I think in his position, I personally wouldn't have a check raising range. But that makes it harder for me because I have no idea what he's doing this with. Anyways, all of that is kind of irrelevant because there's no chance I'm folding aces here. So I decide to make the call. The turn brings the 10 of spades. It doesn't scare me because there are literally no cards that could have come out on the turn that would have scared me. So when my opponent tank bets 200, leaving 150 behind, I had already mentally committed to the hands given our stack sizes. I could technically call, and that would objectively give me an option to fold on the river, whereas shoving wouldn't, but he's got 150 behind, guys. Let's not overcomplicate things. I decide to put him all in, and obviously he folds. He folds. Was there a typo in my phone? No, he folded. The video shows he's folded. Yeah, okay, we won one with aces, guys. Let's go. I've got ace-5 of clubs in the cutoff for this next hand. It's only 6-handed. The under-the-gun / low jack player straddles to $10. The hijack opens to 30. I call, and so does the straddler. So we are going to a flop of 4-5-3 with 2 hearts. So decent flop from my hand. We've got top pair with a gut shot, but our pair is very vulnerable. The under the gun player checks, and the initial raiser makes it 40. I'm going to make the call here. I think you could make a case for raising, but my hand's decent and, we want to keep his bluffs in. So I make the call, the other player folds, so we're going to a turn, which is an interesting one. It's the deuce of hearts completing the front door flush, but it also gives me the straight. My opponent could very well have an ace as well, so there is a chance we're chopping. He continues for $100, and for this price, definitely cannot go away. I make the call. River comes the 3 of diamonds, pairing the board, and this time my opponent checks. This is pretty interesting because there's a decent chance we're chopping and that he's scared of a flush, so he maybe just wants to get to showdown. I think he would be betting if he had a flush here. He shouldn't be scared of me having a boat here since I'm pretty much always raising sets at some point in the hand. I'm putting him on either an overpair or maybe some kind of ace that just wants to get to showdown. And I decide to bet to target the ace X holdings. Could bet maybe like half pot or something and try to just get value from an overpair. But at the same time, if I can get him off a chop, that'd be great as well. So I actually ask how much he has behind. He tells me he's got about 700 left behind, and for a little while, I contemplate overbetting and just putting him all in, because that's what all the cool kids are doing nowadays. Then I remember that I'm not one of them. I decide on a bet sizing of 350, potentially trying to get an ace to fold, although if I wanted to do that, then I think an overbet does the job better. But at the time, this is the sizing I chose. He doesn't call right away, which is a good sign. After a short period of thinking, my opponent makes the call, and I'll let you guys see what happens next.
Are we chopping? Oh, nice hand. Did not expect that.
Yeah, I'm very surprised he didn't call right away with the nut flush here. He was probably just thinking for a bit and making sure that I couldn't have a boat with the line I took. I've definitely been scared of monsters under the bed as well, and have even made some really nitty folds that were wrong, so can't really blame the guy, and unfortunately, he beats me in yet another hand with a flush. That's going to be it for this session, guys. I lost several other hands during this session, but none of them were really that interesting, and I think the only significant hand I won was the one where I had aces. I was in for 1,600 total, and after that last hand, I just cashed out for 370. So that makes for a loss of $1,230 in only 4 hours. Definitely a brutal session, but I did have a really big win on my birthday, so can't really complain. That's just part of poker, and we're just gonna have to take the L this time. Alright guys, the fan is off. That's the end of the vlog. I really hope you guys enjoyed the hands. Hopefully the next video can come out as quickly as this one did. Definitely one of the more brutal sessions, but that's just poker, and it is what it is.
It is what it is.
But you know something you guys can do that would help me feel better about this session? Subscribe and like the video, because that shows me that you guys want to see more vlogs, and that'll motivate me to keep making videos and keep posting more consistently. So make sure you do that. Also, if you guys have been watching, you know that I've recently gone to rock climbing, well, somewhat recently, and that is like my new thing. So if you guys rock climb or are interested in that as well, I actually started a new channel. Let's go.
Let's go. Let's go.
It's called Heel Hook Co, and I already posted a video. So if you want to check out that channel, I'll leave a link in the description, and I'll put it at the end of this video as well. Go ahead and support that channel as well if you can, and also follow me at Heel Hook Co and Dojebag Poker on Instagram. All right, that's it, guys. See you later. I'll see you in the next vlog whenever that comes. Peace.